for me, okay? You're watching the stream. Today we're looking at athletes and activism. Here's an example.
This is a moment. We got to keep pushing forward.
We want change. We want justice. If you took the time to come here and march, then you take the time to vote. That's our power.
Some of the injustices that we've been seeing is not okay.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want?
Let us be perfectly clear.
Black Lives Matter.
So that was an NBA video released in June of this year showing their support for the Black Lives Matter and social justice movements. We are talking about the power of athletes and activism and using their platforms. I know you've got opinions. You can jump in to our YouTube comment section and be part of this discussion. Let me introduce the stream's very own dream team. No pressure, guess. Dave, say hello. Tell everybody who you are.
Oh, hey, my name is Dave Zirin. I'm the sports editor at The Nation magazine, and I've written a bunch of books about the politics of sports.
Nice to have you. Welcome back to the stream. Hello, Maxwell. Tell everybody who you are. Do your own introduction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maxwell Pierce. I'm an athlete, I'm an influencer, and I play for the Harlem Globetrotters.
Thanks for joining us, Maxwell. And Jantel, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jantel Lavender. I'm with the Indiana Fever. It's a WNBA team, the Women's National Basketball Association, and I'm an activist, and I am happy to be here.
Jantel, I'm just looking at the WNBA, and they are out there. They're all in with using our power, using our platform. If you could pick one moment over the last couple of months of athletes using their platform for activism, what was the moment that stuck out at you, that really hit home?
Well, definitely the entire initiative that the WNBA has put forward with the Say Her Name campaign and wearing Breonna Taylor's name on the back of all of their jerseys has been huge. Sports is one of the biggest platforms I think you can use for activism because people watch it and people want to see it on TV. And when you see athletes taking a stand, people take notice, people take heed. And I think that that's been the biggest thing I've seen since Kaepernick and the Milwaukee Bucks sitting out because of the recent killing of Jacob Blake.
Maxwell, there was a moment for me where I just went, gulp. I cannot believe they did this. And that was when the NFL players came out and said, we support Black Lives Matter movement. After so long, after it being so controversial, after the take a knee became a political discussion, what was the moment for you where you just said, this is extraordinary in the world of sport today?
For me, it was when the NBA teams decided not to play their games and seeing the impact of that and how quickly it spread to other leagues. I mean, the MLB, the MLS, a few other leagues and other teams followed suit within 24 hours. So to see the impact and the silence that it brought, so many people were looking forward to watching sports games. But when they turn on their TV and there's no sports and they're seeing why these players aren't playing, it really forces us to think about the injustices that they're speaking up about.
Femi?
Femi,
Dave, I really have to agree with what Maxwell said, because I think what happened a couple of weeks ago when the NBA, the WNBA, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, the National Hockey League, Naomi Osaka in tennis, when all of these folks in quick order, in a matter of hours, decided that they were going to go on strike for Black lives. It was such a remarkable moment because it is unequaled in sports history. We're dealing with history without a compass. We've never seen athletes step up to this degree, and we've certainly never seen them use their labor power to say that racism needs to be challenged.
And that strike that happened across so many different sports happened because Jacob Blake, who thankfully is not dead, was shot by the police in the back, and that video went viral. And then athletes were like, "We're not playing. We can't play. We don't feel like we're playing." I want to share with you Shannon Ryan's thoughts. She's a sports reporter at the Chicago Tribune, and she, like you, Dave, says this is something very different that's happening with sports and athletes. Let's take a look.
Usually when we think about athlete protests, we're thinking about individuals, maybe Muhammad Ali or Tommy Smith and John Carlos raising their fists at the 1968 Olympics, or Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. What's different about today's protests is we're seeing it across different leagues, different sports, different races, genders. It's really been a collective push. And that's, I think, through history when we've seen the most change is when there's been a united front from athletes. Right now you're seeing NBA has demanded arenas be used for voting sites. Mississippi athletes helped push for a change to change their state flag to get rid of a Confederate symbol. Whether it becomes a tipping point or not really depends on how much they can keep this momentum going and remain united.
I also want to share with you some thoughts from the YouTube comments. And some people are upset that you're using your platform, Jantel and Maxwell. Takumbo says the only thing you are doing is destroying the sport and the league. Jantel, you take that first of all.
That's very interesting because when you have world issues, you need to focus on them. And being a Black woman, being a part of sports, we make up a large percentage of the sporting community, especially in basketball. And I feel like if we're not being respected, how are we able to get out on the court and play a game? And that's the part that frustrates me and gets me a little riled up, is because you have to respect us as a human being first. We are people. We play this sport, but as a people, we have to be respected. And if you can come to a game and cheer us on, then you should be able to respect us when we go home.
Rodrigo says, Maxwell, I'm fascinated by what your answer is going to be. Rodrigo, thank you for being on the show. Just because someone knows how to hoop doesn't mean that his or her opinion is of any value.
Wow. Well, first of all, it's important to understand that whatever job you have, let's say you're a politician who's interested in sports, everyone is entitled to their own level of opinion or intellect on things that they are not a professional in. That's first and foremost. And then secondly, I am going, just like all of the other athletes, I am going to continue to use my platform that I have built to speak on issues that I have direct ties and direct connections to, as well as my family members and the members in my community. Just like Chantel said, if you can come to a game and support me as an athlete, then you should be able to support and respect me as the human behind the jersey. Because we are human beings first and athletes second, no matter how way you want to look at it.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, just the ignorance of those statements, with all due respect, coming from the internet are really overpowering. When people say that they don't want sports and politics to mix, what they're really saying is they don't want sports and a certain kind of politics to mix. They have no problem with politics in sports when we're talking about nationalism, when we're talking about celebrating the military, heck, when we're talking about celebrating the police. Many teams do these celebrations of law enforcement nights or whatnot. But when it comes to the athletes themselves trying to use the platform that they have built, that they have earned, to speak out about their lives, then all of a sudden the hammer comes down. And there is, I would argue, a seriously racist undertone or sometimes overtone to this statement, which is basically shut up and play, which is basically get out there and entertain me, and I don't want to hear what you have to say. And it's amazing that in 2020, we're still wrestling with what was said in 1968 when Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their fists. One of their slogans for the 68 Olympics was, they said, "Why should we run in Mexico City only to crawl home?" Which is still what animates, I think, the athletic protests today. Why should we be loved with our uniforms on, but then disdained when the uniform is off.
Let me just show you Naomi Osaka. She won the US Open on September the 12th. And these images, people were waiting every day. What mask is she going to wear? Have a look here on my laptop and you can see it. And she is wearing the mask of people who met a violent end because of police brutality. Every day she had a Black Lives Matter movement mask on. And then at the end of the US Open, when she won it, this is what she told the commentator who asked her about the mask.
You said from the beginning you had 7 matches, 7 masks, 7 names. What was the message you wanted to send, Naomi?
Well, what was the message that you got was more the question. I feel like the point is to make people start talking.
What were you most gratified about the awareness that you raised?
I mean, for me, I've been inside of the bubble, so I'm not really sure what's really going on in the outside world. All I can tell is what's going on social media, and for me, I feel like, you know, the more retweets it gets, or that's so lame, but, you know, the more people talk about it.
Chantel, what's it like being a female athlete, seeing other, actually doesn't even matter, being an athlete, seeing other athletes all working together to the same end? When you saw Naomi do that, Maxwell, I know you tweeted out Naomi's success on your Twitter account as well. Chantel, you go first. Maxwell, you go second.
Well, it's phenomenal, and she's on one of the biggest stages that you can ask for in the sports community, and to see her speaking out, it lets people know the seriousness of what's going on in the world. And she said something that was very interesting to me. She said she wants people to talk, and I feel like I would kind of tweak that in a sense with being in 2020, and it's about action. It's about physically going out and physically doing something. And I think that there's been a generational shift with this generation, and we're tired and we're not going to deal with it. And she knows the people that she's around. And I love her response when she said, "What did you get out of it?" And that to me was huge. It's because it's our friends that we need to step up. It's the people that are around us, that are playing with us, our teammates that are not Black, our teammates that that love us every day when we put on that jersey and compete with them. But it's about what they think. It's about what they feel. If they can hear us cry out and speak out about it and go home and be with a racist family member, that's not, the message isn't being clear. And I love that she mentioned that it's about how the world see it, non-African American people that are not being oppressed, how they respond to it.
Maxwell, you shared Naomi's picture on your Twitter feed. Why?
Absolutely. For one, you know, it's extremely admirable how Naomi has spoken up, and really how the WNBA has been leaders in this movement. I mean, when you think about women in sports, they deal with a whole nother layer of adversity. They have to deal with misogyny. They have to deal with hypermasculinity. People constantly telling them that they shouldn't be playing the sport, which is just completely blasphemous. So there's so many additional things that they have to encounter and deal with outside of being, especially women of color in sports. So I really do tip my hat off to them. And I am trying extremely hard to match that energy and be in support, even when support there can be scarce sometimes.
Dave, let me put this to you from YouTube. This is from Mohammed Wajahat. How much can sports change racism in America?
Well, when I hear that question, I think about what Dr. Martin Luther King said about Jackie Robinson, who called him a sit-inner before sit-ins, a freedom rider before freedom rides. Jackie Robinson integrates Major League Baseball in 1947, almost a full decade before the flowering of the Montgomery bus boycott and the civil rights movement in the South. A sit-inner before sit-ins, a freedom rider before freedom rides. Oftentimes, sports is like a weather vane in our society, and it tells us which way the wind is blowing. And sure enough, right now, what we're seeing is the wind blowing towards justice. The wind is blowing towards some sort of reckoning with the history of racism, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. This is a global movement. And I think what you're seeing, what's so incredible about this, is that what it does is it punctures privilege. because it's very easy to be a white person in the United States, or I guess anywhere throughout the world, and not have to confront the reality of what it means to be Black, not have to confront the reality of what it means to be an indigenous person. And when you have sports athletes, when you have them speaking out about these issues, it punctures that privilege, it severs that segregation, and it forces people to really confront the realities that people, I mean, that's what Naomi Osaka was doing. She was saying, look, if you're a tennis fan, you might have the luxury of not knowing who Elijah McClain is, but I'm going to put that name in front of you. You are going to know who Elijah McClain is. And that's powerful, but that's also why athletes, I would argue, are policed so heavily by the reactionary powers that be, because they don't want them using that power precisely because they understand how powerful it is.
I want to share with you, athletes, Jantel and Maxwell, some really supportive comments. These ones this time coming from Twitter. Some thoughts about athletes and activism. Citizens speak up, that's democracy for you, and no one surrenders their citizenship at the locker room door. Doug says the better question is not why are athletes using their platform, but why should they be denied an activist role in whatever they believe in. And then I'm actually just going to jump across to Maxwell, something that you tweeted out, and a story that reminds us that there is racism everywhere, including in sport and in the sports world. So TV hosts throw banana at Harlem Globetrotter. You are the Harlem Globetrotter. What happened and why is it relevant to what we're speaking about today?
So I was given an interview about an upcoming game, and I was showing a few tricks with a basketball when one of the news anchors pulled out a tangerine from his pocket and threw it to me. So I caught it, very confused, returned it to him, and then he threw it to someone off camera who threw the tangerine at me for a second time. This time I didn't catch it, and then shortly after that, a white woman behind the camera threw a banana at me. This is all happening on live television. And so my initial reaction, I caught the banana, extremely stunned, shocked. I didn't know how to even begin to unpack what was actually happening. So then I left there immediately, and my first thought was I need to get a copy of this video. So I got a copy of the video, and I debated on whether or not I wanted to go public with it for a while. But I knew that I still had a job to do, and I didn't want to ruffle the feathers with my job. So I tried my best to suppress it. And then Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, all of these things reignited the flame that had been applied at the time of this experience. And that's when I knew that, okay, I have to speak up about this. So I decided to go public with the story, mainly to use it as a teachable moment for everyone who came across the experience. For me, I learned the value in using my platform and my voice and the power that I truly have. It empowers other people who experience microaggressions on a daily basis to voice their experiences and not be quiet about it. And it also shows that, we need to, in order to create real change, we're going to have to figure out how to take full accountability for the things that we do and learn from them. These microaggressions have a humongous impact on us, and it may seem subtle, but any person who experiences microaggressions on a daily basis can tell you the actual and true weight of what these kinds of things do.
Dave, I want to bring you in on a couple of things that have happened, big things that have happened. So the NFL has sort of said, sorry about the Colin Kaepernick thing, in not so many words. The Celtics, for instance, have a look here on my laptop. Celtics unveiled $25 million, a 10-year plan to fight racial injustice. You could be cynical because this has only just happened in the last few months, and the mood last year was not quite this. A story that you worked on, we've entered the era of branding for Black lives, which may be suggesting that this isn't truly real, but maybe teams and owners don't have any option but to go along with it, because what are they going to say? No, you can't kneel right now? How would they say that, Dave?
Exactly. I mean, we just have to remember that these are multi-billion-dollar corporations and they know which way the wind is blowing. And they know that they have very restive players. So the NFL, for example, they do not want their players to go out on strike like the NBA, the WNBA, Major League Baseball, etc., because they make billions of dollars off of television deals. So they're trying to figure out ways to make sure that their players are appeased. So they're putting forward these initiatives. But for a lot of the players, that's not enough. And that's what's so real in all of this. So there's all of this fluff. There's a lot of branding. There's, putting things like end racism in the end zones and assistant coaches wearing T-shirts that say it starts with us. But the players themselves have their own independent line, their own independent analysis of what's happening. So a lot of teams, for example, did not go out for this kind of staged national anthem where they also played the Black national anthem, as it's known, Lift Every Voice and Sing. They stayed in the locker room. And the Miami Dolphins said, we don't want to be part of the propaganda. We don't want to be part of the fluff. And what's so interesting about it is that what the NFL is doing in particular is they're putting out all these statements for racial justice initiatives. But if you look at the one word they're not using, and the players are acutely aware of this, the one word they're not using is police. They're keeping that out of the picture because they don't want to offend, that they're scared, I would argue, scared of law enforcement, scared of the police unions in this country. And so they're staying off actually addressing what the players want to address. And frankly, what the nation wants to address, the nation that's been in the streets for the largest demonstrations in the history of the United States. And that's police reform.
And that's the part that I have an issue with sometimes is the money. And it was mentioned also that I have a job to do, or it's something that I don't want to lose my job, or I want to make sure I'm saying it in a nice way. And I think that that's where athletes have to get to, where that we know that it's not about, hey, we have to make sure we don't include police officers, not to upset them. I know one time in the WNBA, we had a team that was boycotting against, Minnesota Lynx was boycotting against the police, and the police officers left the game because we were making a stand and saying, hey, we're tired of the police brutality that our race is experiencing, and they didn't even want to hear. So to me, it's about getting to a place where people aren't afraid. And and even in the sports world, there's still this tiptoe around the actual idea. There's still this tiptoe where you only can do a certain amount in order to keep our fans engaged. And that's the problem as well. And I feel that's where we have to get to in order to actually see shift. People not being worried about the millions of dollars that are being talked about. It's really a social issue that has to be excluded and eliminated. Money can't be talked about, and hurting people's feelings can't be talked about, because this is a race that's being oppressed against. And it's blatant, it's clear in the media what's happening to black individuals that are unarmed. And to me, it's not about money. It's not about anything other than what it is. And that's where we have to really make a change and a shift, and not worry about, hey, I'm going to lose out on money, or hey, I'm going to upset the wrong group of people and we're going to lose this sponsorship. It has to move from that to, hey, this is the first issue, and then we'll worry about that as it follows.
Dante, what you just did. Yeah. Yeah, Max.
Sorry. I
Go
absolutely agree with that, because and I think what's different about right now is that, we're starting to see a shift in the percentages of athletes that are speaking up within these leagues. I mean, when you look at the totality of all of the athletes that are now starting to use their platform, you're seeing a shared empowerment from the athletes that stood up at the time when they were by themselves. And so when you stand up by yourself, your job becomes more of a threat, because it's very easy to single one person out. But there's strength in numbers. And so now that we're seeing a multitude of athletes use their platform and speak about the same things, it makes it that much tougher for these leagues and these industries to, quote unquote, ridicule them for voicing their opinion or voicing how they feel about human rights and flat out what is right.
I'm going to bring one more voice in just for the end of the show. And this is Olivia talking about athletes using their platform, why it is essential in 2020. Let's take a look.
Naomi Osaka is a person of influence in an overtly white space. She chooses to use her platform to raise awareness on longstanding issues that are yet to be fixed. Systemic racism, police brutality, the fact that countless of Black people are being unjustifiably profiled and killed by those that are paid and sworn in to protect and serve. As someone of the media, it's not only how she uses her platform, but also how her influence affects her fan base and how they talk and see these matters that affect people who are still marginalized by the powers that.
Athletes getting their fans, getting their public to talk about social justice. Jantel, Maxwell, Dave, thank you for using our platform to talk about athletes and activism. Appreciate you. Thanks, YouTube. I'll see you next time.